Hi everyone and welcome to a brand new studio vlog, and this one is going to be a little bit different because I'm going to be doing a Q&A with you. It has been so long since I did a Q&A. I'm not sure if I've ever done one on my YouTube channel. So I'd asked you on Instagram to submit any questions, and I've got a whole range actually about the business, what's happening behind the scenes, other things related to me, for example, running a business with a chronic illness, a whole host of things. So I'm going to go through your questions and just be as open as I can. If this is the first time you've come across me, my name's Emma. I run a stationery and gift business where all the products are designed to spread positivity and encourage self-care. And that is actually what my first question is related to. So I've got my questions handy on my phone, and the first one is, what inspired you to start a business based on positivity and self-care? So we're going to have to go back in a time machine, probably to 2018, and I was working as a social worker, working with children with disabilities and their families, and it was a love-hate relationship with the job. I loved working with the kids, I loved working with the families, I loved the challenge of it, and just trying to get the kids included in society more and get their needs met. But on the flip side of that, it was a very high stress job, a lot of pressure, a lot of staff shortages, which meant the hours were just longer and longer. The support from colleagues and managers was disappearing because everybody was away, and you know, the people that were there with me, who I'm still in touch with today, like, we really tried to keep each other going. But unfortunately for me, having chronic health difficulties that are impacted by stress, because I have fibromyalgia, which is a chronic health condition which gives you kind of widespread pain, fatigue, a whole host of weird and wonderful like sensory symptoms and things. And yeah, it's impacted by stress. So the higher the stress, the higher the symptoms are. And I do take medication for my condition, but one of the main ways that you are told to manage chronic conditions like fibromyalgia is to pace your activities. Now, you can't really pace your activities as a social worker, because if you go in the morning and something's kicked off, you've got to go full pelt for who knows how many hours. And there just wasn't the space to practice self-care. And what ended up happening is my health just took a sharp decline. My mental health was suffering because I felt like outside work, I was really just spending my time trying to get well enough to go back in. And so life outside work disappeared. I felt like a rubbish wife, rubbish daughter, no time for making friends, no time for me. So basically what happened is I had a massive period of burnout, and I knew I had to leave. I knew I had to walk away, and it was such a hard decision to make because I'd given up a really good job that I was in before to retrain as a social worker. Right from the beginning of that training, my health started on the decline. And I thought, if I give this up, then who on earth am I? But I just knew I couldn't carry on as I was because my health was getting worse and worse. I was having periods of confusion. It was quite scary. So I'd handed my notice in, but I ended up collapsing at home, and I only ended up working about 2 weeks of a 3-month notice. And then I was on sick leave, and then I left. So it was a very abrupt end, and I was really feeling lost and not knowing what on earth to do next. And I started drawing just as a way to focus on self-care. Started drawing digitally. I'd never done it before, never really drawn that much before, to be honest. And it was really helping me. And I actually started this YouTube channel to document my journey of how I was using planning and creativity to find new meaning in my life and bring me back to life, really, find some purpose, connect with myself again, like get back to the person, because I just felt like a shell. So that's what I did. And I actually did a talk about it, about my experiences. I did it at a planner event a couple of years ago. If that's something you'd be interested in hearing the full story and how I used planning to really help me along the way, then let me know. I can always redo it as a video here on YouTube, so drop me a comment. But essentially, it was really working for me, and I was creating things, and I started to connect with others who will find in my YouTube videos who are having such similar experiences. And I think I realised two things really. The first being that self-care is not a luxury like it's presented. It is absolutely vital if you are going to live a healthy and happy life. And I think we're expected to do more and more and more. And there's a breaking point for everyone. I think mine's lower than others because of my chronic illness. And there's no shame in that, because actually it's led me to a position where I am so much happier with my daily life. But the second thing is how many people were having similar experiences. How many of us put ourselves at the bottom of the list, if we even make it on there? How many of us feel stressed, overworked, no time for self-care? We're just trying to get through the days and it just feels like you're in survival mode all the time. And I just wanted to take what I'd learned and try and continue to practice what I preach. And it's hard. I am definitely not perfect, but I think there's something about showing that and showing that I'm just a human trying to do my best, as we all are, and just encourage others. Create things that give people little bits of encouragement to, even if it's just a tiny little bit of self-care you manage to squeeze in your day, or a smile that you wouldn't otherwise have had. Like, that really spurs me on. I think it's really, really important for people. And so, yeah, I feel like it's led me to a point where I'm helping people again, but in a very different way. So that's why. That's always a long answer. Sorry about that. Okay, I have two questions which are pretty much the same. I had, what is your all-time favourite product you've created, and what's your favourite product? New follower, love your page. Thank you very much. I have had to think really, really hard about this, because picking a favourite, it's like, I imagine, picking a favourite amongst your children. I've created all these little pretties and now I've got to pick a favourite. I'd definitely say it's one of my enamel pins, and I'm going to grab the one that I think is my absolute favourite. This, I would say, is my absolute favourite product. There we go, my Unapologetically Me pin, and it's very simple compared to some of my other designs, but the meaning behind it is so important to me. So it says, unapologetically me, let your true self shine, because who you are is incredible. And I'm autistic. I found out at the age of 30, and I'd always kind of struggled with my mental health because I felt like I didn't fit in the world, and I didn't know why. And I was bullied a lot at school and beyond, let's be honest. And yeah, I find it hard to fit in social situations, and when you haven't got any answers as to why you find things difficult, it just feels like you're failing at things, and it's very hard to love who you are. And I think that's something I'd always struggled with. And finding out I was autistic at age 30, I'm 35 now, just was one of the best things to happen to me, to be honest, because I realised that I was comparing myself to a group of people that I wasn't meant to be like. I was meant to be like these other autistic people, but I just didn't know they were out there. And particularly a lot of women mask and they don't get a diagnosis. And they're all out there feeling like they don't fit and they don't know why. And so it's hard to find each other. But by finding out I was autistic and kind of being open about it, I have been able to come into contact with other people and to understand myself and why I am the way I am, and reframe it as a positive and be a lot kinder to myself, a lot more forgiving. I used to be very harsh on myself. And so I designed this pin last year for Autism Awareness Day, week, month. I think there's all three and I never know which one you're supposed to say. And I just wanted to celebrate the fact that whoever you are as an individual, that is beautiful as it is. You don't need to be anything else other than that. It always makes me feel emotional when I talk about it. I didn't think I'd get emotional. Because yeah, if I think how harsh I used to be on myself, my self-esteem and self-worth and self-love, like, it's not even comparable to where it was. I've really spent the last 5 years discovering who I am and what I enjoy, not just trying to fit in and follow others all the time. And I'm really like the person that I've found under there. And so that was the inspiration for the pin, and so I think it's my favourite because it has such a personal meaning, and I think when people have purchased it, it has its own special meaning for them too, and that makes me really happy. Okay, so the next one is similar, but I have a different answer. The next one is, what is your favourite illustration you've done to date? Now, I used to have a Patreon community. I used to do physical goodie boxes, and I drew a little art print which was a typewriter, and it said you can start writing a new story at any time. And I loved this print, and then it was an exclusive to the Patreon boxes, so I didn't do anything else with it. And then after time, I spoke to my patrons and I was like, look, I love this thing. I want to redesign it and create some products out of it. And they were like, yeah, go for it. So I did a live stream with my patrons and I re-illustrated it, and it is my favourite thing I've ever illustrated, I think, to date. So I'm going to pop it on the screen now. It's this beautiful typewriter. I love like the soft, delicate colours and the florals, the kind of vintagey feel. And I popped it in my wall calendar. It was January's illustration in my calendar, but I have two products with it on. I have a sticker, a gorgeous little matte sticker, and I also have this wooden keyring, and it's one of my favourite things. I absolutely love it. I think like the wood grain and the wood finish goes really nicely with this like vintagey feel, and that's my favourite illustration that I've ever done, and I'd love to apply it onto any product I could get my hands on because I really like it. And again, kind of has a bit of a personal message for me because I drew it at a time where I was starting a complete new chapter and figuring out who I was, and yeah, it's never too late to do that. Okay, next question I know is from the lovely Antonia, and Antonia asked, am I going to be at StationeryFest again this year? And I can announce, yes, I am. I can't wait. I went to StationeryFest last year, which, if you don't know, is a planner, journal, stationery convention in the UK, in Manchester, and it's at the end of June. And there are two ticket types. There's a VIP where you get access to loads of workshops and talks and a goodie bag and like all the VIP-ness, and then there is a shopping area, and I'm not sure on prices, but last year to get into just the shopping area, if you didn't want the VIP, it was only £10, and there was a hall full of different sizes of stationery businesses, loads of UK small businesses, which was great to see, and there were like 800 people came to shop and visit us and see what we had to offer, and it was so nice because where are stationers in the UK now? Like, there's no stationery shops, and just having those opportunities to get in front of people who were so excited about the things that we get excited about was, oh, it was just, what a good day. Tiring, but a good day. And so I had to apply to do it again because I just loved it. My mum came with me and manned the stall with me like she always does because she's a pro. And I said to her, we saw kids and their mums, it was mostly mums, but some dads as well, and they were all, you know, excitedly, whoa, look at all these things. And I was like, where was this when I was a kid? We would have absolutely loved it. But it's just fab that it's there now. So I am going to be there again, and I can't wait. So if any of you decide to go, I'll pop the details in the description. Make sure you come and say hi, and I will be making an exciting announcement at the end of this video if you watch all the way to the end, and there is a link to the StationeryFest event, so I'll tell you at the end. The next question is, do you think you will need more staff anytime soon? And I think there's two answers to this. Yes, I need them. Can I afford them? It's really hard growing a small business because it's just you doing all the things, and it's one of the reasons I had to close my Patreon community, because I am just a human, and if I'm not careful, I'll fall back into that same track of just on the health decline because I'm not looking after myself. Small business owners work so many hours to do what we do, and you have to be a jack of all trades and be able to do it all, and it's really rewarding, but it's also really hard work. But I feel I'm at a funny stage where I'm rushed off my feet. I know I need help, but can I afford it? Can I like make that financial leap? And maybe if I had the help, I'd have the free time to be able to generate more income, but that's a risk. So I'd be really interested if there's anyone out there who's made that leap at some point. I keep thinking a little bit about Catnip. If you watch her vlogs, she has her husband and her brother-in-law working with her, and she's had her brother and sister working with her at different times. And yeah, it makes me interested to think, like, how did she make that leap and what were the considerations and stuff? I might dive back through her vlogs, but if anyone has any experience, I'd love to know how that went for you and like when you decided to take the plunge with that. This is a really fun question. Are there plans to collaborate with any other businesses or creators anytime soon? And it's something I would love to do a lot more this year. I have a few ideas in mind, but it'd be really lovely if you had ideas of who you think, God, yeah, if Sunshine Line collaborated with this person, that would be really exciting. Or like, what would you like to see from a collaboration? If there's something that comes to your mind, let me know, because I am all up for trying to make those things happen and yeah, see where it takes me. And I think it's always really interesting as well to see how other people work and they do things, because when you work on your own, like you haven't really got anyone else to bounce those ideas off. So I have a couple of collaborations already planned for this year, which I won't announce yet. But like I said, if you've got any kind of fun ideas, let me know in the comments. Next up, the question is, do you find it challenging to balance your YouTube presence with running your business? Absolutely. I used to do 2 videos a week. I'm not really sure how. One year I decided to do Vlogmas. That was ridiculous. It feels like, as a small business owner, when you focus on building up one area, something else drops, like you can't spin all the plates. But YouTube is how I started and I really, really like it. My YouTube growth has slowed, but I've kind of pivoted my content. I didn't used to do studio vlogs, so I know not everyone that followed me originally for the pure planner content will necessarily be interested in seeing the behind the scenes, but I love vlogging. It's made me take more videos in my daily life and try and record things that I am doing, because I just think it's like a little time capsule to look back on, if nothing else. It's really exciting to me, and I love watching other small businesses behind the scenes on their YouTube channel and all kinds of YouTube content, to be honest. But yeah, it is difficult. It's also difficult for me to decide how much of what to put out there, because I still occasionally do planning and journaling videos, and I always think, does that confuse people, like subscribers that are watching, and they're like, what's this now? Does it confuse YouTube's algorithm if I kind of switch between the two? Or should I just say, sod all that, let's do what I enjoy, which is kind of the approach I've been taking. Maybe doing a planning video once a month, and then studio vlogs, and then like these occasional talking videos is kind of what I'm thinking. But it is getting increasingly hard to keep up the pace with it, because it's the editing that takes time. And I did experiment with trying to outsource the editing, and I thought it'll save me loads of time. But the amount of times I had to go back, might as well have done it myself, honestly. And then, you know, I don't make that much money on YouTube, so it wouldn't cover an editor. So in the end, I had to knock that on the head. So yeah, it's all basically about being as organised as I can, which brings me on to the next question, which is, how do you balance the different aspects of running a business? So yeah, like I said, there's lots of things. You've got to be a finance person, photographer, videographer, like content creator, admin person, designer, creator, extraordinaire. Like, you've got to be all the things. And I don't think you can keep on top of it all without having systems in place to keep you organised. I am trying to evolve mine all the time as you know, the business grows and changes, and if you're not careful, you can spend your whole life just organising and reorganising. So yeah, I'm trying to focus on getting functional systems in place that help me and that mean that things are quicker. I don't have to keep redoing the same thing over and over. And a couple of videos ago, I actually did a video on how I'm using Notion to keep myself organised, and that video was more about kind of my goals for the year and how I plan to keep on top of that using Notion, but it did do a very brief tour of my Notion setup. If staying organised in your small business is something you would like to see more videos about, let me know specifically what you'd like to see, because it essentially brings my two loves together of planning, organisation and running my small business. So if there's things you're stuck on, like problems you feel like you have, or thoughts you keep having that, you know, this is really difficult, why isn't there an easier way to do this, always message me or just drop a comment in the videos, because I'd love to create content around the things that you would value seeing. But yeah, my overall broad tip would be to have those systems in place and like repeatable processes that you do, because once you fall behind on staying organised, sometimes it feels really hard to scrabble on the treadmill and catch back up to where you need to be. But also, I would say give yourself a bit of grace. You are only human. You are going to have to adapt. I think being adaptable is one of the necessary things for being a small business owner, because you think you have a plan and then something else pops up that's a priority and you can't just delegate it to someone else. So yeah, being flexible whilst being organised is my tip. So the next few questions are sort of more me related, but still related to my business in a way. So the first one is, what do you like to do for fun? So I have to be careful that Sunshine Lane isn't all I do, because I really enjoy it and I put my heart and soul into it. And I think a lot of small business owners fall into this trap that everything becomes work related. And there was a time where I didn't create anything that I couldn't use in the business, and I didn't create just for fun's sake anymore. And so I always make sure to try and do that in different ways. So sometimes I will change like the medium, so it won't be digital illustration, it'll be at the weekend. For example, me and my mum went to a craft workshop. She got me a voucher for Christmas and we did some glass fusion. We both really like trying out different crafts and doing different craft workshops and yeah, learning new skills and just having a go at stuff. So that's something we try and do regularly for fun. And then sometimes I also pick up those hobbies. I think I've probably got a lot of people who watch these videos that collect supplies for things. Tell me if I'm wrong. And so I'm looking around me and I do have collections of items from various past obsessions when I've come across different craft things, but I'll get round to them again. I just need to keep them because they're beautiful. And I kind of go in phases where this is my thing that I'm really into and then this is my thing. So yeah, I am trying to finish some embroidery that I started at a craft workshop last year, and in the run up to Christmas it just fell by the wayside. So yeah, I picked that up again last week and I'm going to try and finish that because it's really spring themed and pretty, so I want to get it up in my office. So I'll keep you posted on how that goes. I also really love spending time with my dog Maggie. I just never tire of looking at her, she's beautiful. I will put a montage of her pretty face across the screen. I will say she doesn't photograph great, being like such a massive black fur, but her eyes are just so beautiful and she's like my little unofficial support animal. She knows when I'm anxious, she knows when I'm upset, but she's also like full of fun and life and loves to play. So I like taking her on little doggy play dates with my mum's dog or my friend Joe's dog. Maggie's been invited to her first birthday party, which is, yeah, I never thought that day would happen in a few weeks. It's her friend Polly's birthday, so she's going to a little doggy birthday party. Yeah, so I love just being out in nature, taking her for walks. We live by a lake and I'm trying to get round the lake a few times a week rather than just do a little bit of it. I'm trying to go all the way around. I love going to planner and stationery events throughout the year. I think, you know, if I wasn't taking the shop, I'd still probably be there as an attendee because I really enjoy it. And it means I get to meet some of you along the way as well. So yeah, all those things I like doing for fun. I've also got a memory planner this year that so far I have completed every week, and it's like my fun space where I decorate with stickers and write about what's happened in my life. So I might do some videos on that in the future, but that comes back to the YouTube question of what do I post and when. So yeah, all those things I like doing for fun. And then I have a couple of similar questions. So the first one is, what have you found helps with your chronic condition, and how do you cope with a chronic illness? I've been diagnosed with ME and I'm struggling. So I've funnily enough come across a few small business owners, quite a few, that have various chronic illnesses, and I think working for yourself helps because you can be flexible. Like sometimes there's pressure because it's only you, and if you don't do it, you know it's not going to get done. But equally, if I wake up in a lot of pain, or if my fatigue takes over in an afternoon and I need to lie down, no one's going to tell me that I can't. I can work it flexibly around how I'm feeling, around appointments, you know, all those things without the pressure I had in a traditional 9-to-5 job. Now, I know that's not possible for everybody, but for those that do have their own small business, I kind of wanted to say, make the most of that flexibility. Don't push through. And I think that's probably my advice across the board, is try not to push through. There's times where you have to push through because there's things you absolutely have to do and it's non-negotiable, but I resisted the idea of pacing my activities for years, and obviously, like I said, when I was a social worker, I just found it wasn't really possible, and it felt really sad to walk away from that, but I knew that I had to build a different pace of life for myself and that the two didn't go together, because while I get frustrated because I've always been a million miles an hour person, and sometimes I think people who don't understand sometimes think, oh well, look at you, I'd love a lie down in the afternoon. But I think what people don't understand is it's enforced rest. You don't want to be doing it. You'd much rather be doing something else, and it might mean that you're missing out on something that you really wanted to do, or you're just frustrated that your body isn't doing what you need it or want it to do, and so it becomes a mental battle as much as a physical battle. I think when I first think back to being diagnosed with fibromyalgia, it was put to me very insensitively. I went to a pain specialist and he said to me, I think it's fibromyalgia, but I'm not going to diagnose you, but you better just get used to it because you're going to be experiencing this for the next 60 years. And at no point had I thought that this would be a lifelong thing. I kind of thought there'll be a fix for it, and I'll go to the doctors and they'll do something and I'll just get back to how I was. And yeah, that was quite heavy for it to be kind of brought to you in that way. And then eventually I saw a rheumatologist and I did get my diagnosis, but there is no magic fix when you've got a chronic illness. It comes down to you managing the condition, and I really struggled with my mental health when I got my diagnosis because I felt like the picture of how I thought my life would pan out, I started to realise that I might not be able to do all those things, and it did really affect me at the time. And I remember saying to he's not my husband now, he wasn't my husband then, but partner at the time, I'd understand if you wanted to walk away because this isn't what you signed up for. And I was really thinking to myself, like, what if I can't be a mum? What if I can't keep up with my kids? And I think you start rethinking all the things and your brain goes into overdrive. But I would like to say that I think you come to terms with it and it's not as big as you originally think. It does mean that you kind of become a professional patient in a way, in terms of looking after yourself and making sure you set boundaries is absolutely crucial. Like, if you feel you can't do something, just say no. The people who really care will understand, and at the end of the day, like, you need to put yourself first. You need to be setting those boundaries. You need to be finding out like what makes you feel rested, getting all the foundations in place. But looking after your mental health as much as your physical, I would say, is key, because I notice when one dips, the other dips, and it can become a bit of a vicious circle. But it is possible to create a life where you can work with your health condition and not against it. I worked against mine for quite a few years, and that's when my health was declining, because I felt very much like, I'm not letting this take away from what I want to do. I'm going to push through regardless. And yeah, that didn't work out so well. I think what does is thinking creatively about how you might live a slightly different looking life, but one that leaves you feeling equally fulfilled, but feeling more well. And that's kind of the journey that I've been on. And now I've kind of got from that point of feeling lost to finding meaning again. And I feel fulfilled in my day-to-day life. My mental health is so much better. And my physical health, where it was like peaks and troughs like this, is much more like just little ripples instead of massive tidal waves. Since I've left social work, I haven't had a period where I've just been in bed for weeks. I can keep on top of it. And so I think reach out to other people who understand, to have conversations about how hard it is at times and how frustrating it is at times, but also the positive things that you can do to create a life that you feel happy with and that works with your health, if that makes sense. I hope that was positive advice, but drop me a message. I'm always open to chatting about it. Next question is, how is the adoption going? So for those of you who don't know, I am in the process with my husband of adopting a child. We've decided on just the one. Previously we thought we might, save the world and take on a few at once, but what were we thinking? I think the learning curve becoming a parent is enough as it is. So it's going. So there's 2 stages to the application process. The first stage is very much paperwork heavy, references, work, employment checks, DBS, medical checks, like all those things. And then there's a load of paperwork we have to fill in about our lives and our childhoods and anything and everything that's ever happened to us. I think I wrote a 15-page novel to the social worker in one of the forms, and I was like, I'm so sorry, I didn't really know how to cut that down. So yeah, we did that. We found out we passed the first stage in January. Oh, and we did, I think, 6 days of training with other prospective adopters as well, which was nice. So we did that, we did all that. Very, very busy in the run up to Christmas doing all that. And now we're in stage 2, which is a lot of meetings with our social worker, up to kind of 3 hours a week, all like in one chunk, so like half a day a week, where we go in depth into everything: our relationship, our views on parenting, our views on how we identify, how other people identify, race, religion, sexuality. That was all last week's. About health, so I obviously had to talk a lot about my experiences being autistic, having fibromyalgia, how that's going to impact on parenting, like will I be able to parent and look after my health. And it feels like you're sort of justifying yourself in a way, but we've just taken the approach of being as open as we can with the social worker. Yeah, there's a whole host of topics we've got to talk about. I've got the week off this week, because this week my husband's got a session just on his own about childhood stuff. There's no point in me being there. Then next week is me. And then we've got, 9 sessions in total. We've done 3. So once we've done our one each, we'll kind of be halfway. And then alongside that, there's lots of kind of reading, online training we're expected to be doing and showing that we're learning. So yeah, there's a lot going on, and we're at the stage now where they've said we will be going to a panel in May where there's a whole bunch of professionals, and our social worker will stand up and say, this is Emma and her husband, and she'll present us as a couple, as prospective adopters, and then the panel will ask us some questions of things they want to know more about. She's told me to prepare that my health will be one, and then we have to go away for 20 minutes while they make a decision, and yeah, and then come back and find out. So as it gets closer, I think it becomes more nerve-wracking, because I can't see why we wouldn't be approved, but it's in someone else's hands, and so it does feel really nerve-wracking. And we are looking to adopt a young child, and the likelihood is that we will foster a child first that's likely to be put up for adoption. This is kind of the process for younger children now, and increasingly older children. So the child will essentially come to us and we'll be their foster carers. We won't be mum and dad, and we'll be supporting contact with their birth parents. And meanwhile, birth parents will be trying to do whatever they need to do to keep their baby with them. And then the judge will essentially decide, and there's a chance that we might have to give that child back, which is very scary. It doesn't happen in a lot of cases, but if you're the case, I can imagine like that statistic doesn't really matter to you. But it's good for children who will likely be adopted, because it's less disruption. It's not like they're going from home to a foster placement to an adoptive placement. And it's mixed emotions, really. I think the closer we get to it, we feel like this is something we've waited for so long, but our joy is actually at the expense of someone else's huge loss. And the child's, like, it does make me feel very emotional. And having been a social worker and seen the really hard lives that people live, people just doing their best, aren't they? You know, I've just got massive empathy for birth families, and yeah, we've said we'd be open to meeting birth family if that's something they would want to do, to give them a bit of reassurance that, you know, we're going to be sharing good things about them with their child as they grow up. And yeah, it's just a totally different parenting experience. But I said to my husband last night, good God, we've been preparing ourselves for all the adoption side of stuff and doing all the learning about trauma and parenting techniques and all these things, but we actually need to read the baby books. Like, we need to get ready for that. But this weekend, on Sunday, we're planning to go to this really cute little town near us, Ironbridge, and pick out a teddy bear for the child, whoever they might be, to send them when the time comes, so that they have it with them, and then it comes home to us with them as like some consistency and safety. So that feels really nice. We need to get a nursery, and we need to do these things, because they said we could have a child with us in July if we get approved. So we need to be doing all these things now, but it's definitely mixed emotions, because it is still in someone else's hands. And what if you built a nursery and then got declined? Do you know what I mean? So yeah, it's mixed emotions, but yeah, always happy to chat about it as much as I can. And yeah, keep your fingers crossed for me. It's definitely busy times at the minute. Which ties in perfectly with the next question. How will you balance the business, a small child, and still balance self-care? Well, I need to ask you, any mums watching, if you've got tips, please send me them all. Leave them in the comments, message me, I want to know. In the UK, you get adoption leave the same as you would get maternity leave. So you can take 12 months. However, that's currently not the case for self-employed people. So I'm not actually entitled to any statutory adoption leave, which is scandalous. But it's been a big consideration, because I've worked so hard and like poured my heart and soul into Sunshine Lane that I would hate to just close it and like have a year off and just fade into obscurity. And it's kind of like my creative outlet and part of my self-care. Like, it makes me feel good. So I want to keep it going. As part of a big reason why I closed my Patreon community is just that I recognised I can't do it all. So I've been focusing on trying to get my products in more shops so that in theory they can do more of the selling. I'm not going to be able to do as many product releases this year, and maybe at all moving forward. Like last year I did a ridiculous amount of product launches. At one stage it was like one a month, and I'm just trying to get ahead planning wise and knowing like what are those collections, when are they coming out, what can I front load, and then when baby comes home, however old baby might be, under 1 we think, we will both have a period of time off while we settle them in. Then the only exception to that is trade shows that I've got booked in where my husband's just going to have to cope, but we've spoken to the social worker about that. And yeah, we'll have a period of time just us, and then the plan is for us to share adoption leave essentially. So while obviously we're not sharing adoption leave, like formal adoption leave, because I don't get any, but what I mean is like I will work part-time and he will work part-time, and family will help, I'm sure, because they're all itching to. I think it's going to take a village, so if any family members are watching, please don't stop speaking to me now I've said that. But yeah, I think we're just going to have to play it by ear. Depends the age and stage of the child we get. If they're a young baby, it might be slightly easier to get stuff done at first. If they're crawling and into everything, perhaps not. You've also got to take into account if we're fostering the child, then probably for a good 6 months we'd be taking them to contact with family multiple times a week. Like that's a part-time job in itself. Meetings for the child, meetings from the social worker, they'll be coming round unannounced to check things are going on, so it's going to become an even bigger juggling act. But I think keeping organised is the only way, like knowing what my priorities are for the business and just tackling priority jobs first, not faffing about reorganising things or whatever, you know, like little jobs we do when we're a bit sleepy. When I'm working I need to be working, and when I'm at home I need to be present at home. And I just plan to play it by ear. I think I have lovely customers who will understand that I'm in a period of transitioning to a totally new phase of life. And I think it's a bit of a hard preparation in a way, because it's obviously very, very different to if you are pregnant and already like having that bond with that baby. And like I said, when they come home to us, we won't really be mum and dad for a while. So we're definitely going to be on our own journey, but it's one I'm excited for, and it's one I'm just excited to see how I can work around it. I'm going to have to just be adaptable, and perhaps YouTube videos can only be once a fortnight, and you know, I'm going to really have to see what's doable and have realistic expectations. But people who've been through that / are going through that, I would love to chat to you about it, because it is something that is obviously very present on my mind. July is not that long away, so yeah, please send help. I need it. But ultimately I think, you know, the story that I told at the beginning of this mammoth Q&A session, I know I've been waffling, is that I've seen where it gets to when I don't keep up with my self-care. Like, it is a necessity, and me and my husband have spoken very much about the fact that we each need to step up and be sole carer to give the other one time off. So it's not just time for going back to work, there also needs to be time to just be you and do something for you, and that is as important as the other things. So we've both been very hot on talking about that. Now, I'm sure those parents watching will be laughing, going, yeah, right, she hasn't got a clue what's coming. But I think it's just going to be carving out those little pockets of time, taking an extra 5 minutes walking the dog, taking the baby with me. Like, what can I combine to like bring parts of my life together to do those things? Like, can I have baby in the sling and go for my walk around the lake and have them close to me and they feel safe and comforted, and I'm still doing the things that make me feel good? Like, it's going to be an experiment, but it's one that I'm looking forward to. So yeah, send your help. It's very much needed. And the last question is, What advice would you give to someone who wants to start their own creative business? My first bit of advice would be, do it. Like, if you've got a passion for it, do it in whatever way you can. It might be that you have to start so small. I started really small and it took me a good few years to get it off the ground. And I wouldn't say I'm fully there. Like, I sometimes think people probably think I'm doing better than I am. I don't know. But yeah, I think if you've got a real passion for something, there's something so amazing in trying to share that with other people, and it will bring you a lot of joy. But also be prepared to put the hours in, because it's grueling, and especially if you're doing it like alongside a part-time job. So I would say go for it, but with your eyes open. And then I would say, you know, there's no correct pace to do it. It took me a while because my health wasn't great when I started, and so I used to compare myself to other people and think, God, they're doing practically a product every other week, and they're doing this and they're doing that, and I'm never going to get there because it's taken me so long. But there's no correct pace. Like, you go at your own pace and people will support you. And my other piece of advice is let people see who you are. People like to know the face behind the business, and sometimes that can be a bit nerve-wracking, but I think it really helps you connect with people. And my favourite thing by far about running my business is just the amazing connections I've been able to make with people who have similar interests, similar life stories, similar experiences, and it's just amazing. Like, an amazing way to put you in contact with people you might never have spoken to, but they touch your lives in different ways. It's not just about orders. Like, there's so much more value to it and satisfaction you can get from it. So yeah. Oh, and my last piece of advice is be really clear on what it is you want to do and why you want to do it. And don't get distracted by what other businesses are doing. I definitely did this. I went in all self-care focused and then was like, oh, but other stationery shops are doing this, and that means I must need to have those products. And well, I can't keep up with it, and I can't keep up with the other things I was doing. And then before I know it, I've created a whole load of products that aren't any different from anyone else's, and they've completely strayed from what I wanted to do and why. So if your products are different, that's a good thing. Don't be swayed by what other people are doing. Do what feels right for you and that works with the message you want to get across to people and what you want to share. So that is my answer. I really hope you have enjoyed this Q&A, but this video isn't over yet because I have now got a special announcement. It is a special announcement time. So I teased this in a previous vlog, and that is that I have a brand new podcast. In the last vlog, I asked for your name suggestions, and I realised when I was going through the comments that I was making it way more complicated than it needed to be, and I had come up with the kind of beginning part of the name as the Coffee and Sunshine podcast, and the majority of you really loved that and loved the kind of nice warm feeling that it gave you when you heard the name. And so I thought, why am I complicating it? Why am I then trying to come up with a long subtitle? We don't need that. It's just the Coffee and Sunshine podcast. So the Coffee and Sunshine podcast has now been launched. There are 4 episodes that you can listen to right off the bat. To give you a bit of background on what the podcast is, it is a space where I sit down and each episode I have a conversation with an inspiring person, just everyday people like you and me, because I feel like there is so much to learn from everyday people about how they've navigated the challenges they've come across in their life, the goals they've tried to work towards, what they've learned along the way, and how they've tried to create a life that makes them feel happy, how they've tried to discover little pockets of joy amidst the challenges and the ups and downs that we go through. And so that's what I do in each episode of the podcast. I have a really just authentic, lovely chat with a person about their own unique experiences and think about what we can learn from it. It's just fab to hear some real life inspiration from people from different backgrounds, different walks of life. And as the podcast goes on, I want that to become more diverse and more wide ranging, to try and learn as much as we can to benefit as many people as possible. And I think that you will resonate with something from every conversation, and it might make you think about things in a different way. So the first 4 guests I have on the podcast, they were recorded last year and they were previously Patreon exclusive episodes. But since my Patreon community has closed, the podcast is being re-released and will carry on being available for free. So here's our first 4 guests. The very first guest on the podcast is the lovely Emily Harvey from Emily Harvey Art, and she talks about shifting priorities in her life. It's kind of the theme of the episode. So as we recorded it, she moved from being an illustrator, working in a studio that she'd been in for a couple of years, I think, at that point, and she transitioned to working back at home because that is actually a transition that's really helped her juggle work and family life. And so we had some great chats about what success really looks like and the kind of comparison game we might play between people that do similar things to us and what we chalk up as being successful, but what success actually feels like in your own life can be really different. And just how sometimes priorities shift and you need to shift with them and create those kind of new markers for yourself. So that was a really amazing conversation. Then the second guest was my lovely mum. This was a much requested episode actually when I said I was going to be doing the podcast, because my mum comes to all my events with me, and she's not just Emma's mum, she's actually a whole human with a very interesting backstory. She's not mum, she's Alison, and she found leaving school and entering adulthood really, really daunting. And then she had me, and being a mum kind of became the main focus, and I was mostly raised in a single parent household with my mum. And she experienced a period of depression after I left home, and when she was seeking help for that, it actually inspired her to retrain as a mental health nurse and to try and help people in the way that she'd been supported. And she talks about her experiences totally changing and finding a new career goal. In her current role, she supports pregnant women and new mums who are experiencing mental health difficulties, and she talks about that experience as well as finding out she was autistic in her 50s and how she has used that experience to further support the neurodivergent mums she's seeing coming through mental health services that might not be getting the correct support. And I think it's just an amazingly inspiring conversation. Clearly I'm biased, but even I learnt new things and came away feeling really inspired, even though I know her so well. So definitely recommend that episode. Guest number 3 is the fabulous Becca from Rebel Jones Design, an amazing illustrator running a stationery shop full of kawaii goodies. That was never her original goal. She actually grew up wanting to be a singer, to work in the music industry, and she shared about her experiences going on the X Factor and how that actually led her to feel that actually the music industry isn't for me, right at a time where she was about to start a commercial music degree. It's a really interesting conversation, one that you obviously don't have with people day to day, and a kind of honest look at how you think something's going to be for you and then you realise the whole ethos around an industry just doesn't fit with the way you want to live your life. She talks about how she navigated her way through that and what led her to start her business and get to where she is today. So yeah, absolutely amazing chat. And the 4th guest, last but not least, is the lovely Becky Cross, who is the founder of StationeryFest. So Becky has got decades of experience organising international events, and she decided to combine her 2 loves of event organising and stationery, planners and journaling and create the type of event that she wanted to see. And she created this fantastic planner and stationery convention that happens in the UK once a year in Manchester, and I will be going again this year, as we talked about earlier in the episode. So this really gives a behind the scenes of how and why Becky decided to start this event, what her experiences have been like so far, the challenges she's come up against, what she's learned, and what she's planning for this year's event. So be sure to check that out. I am so grateful to the first 4 guests for taking a chance on a new podcast and sitting down with me to have these fab chats. If you want to listen to the podcast, which I recommend you do, it's available here on YouTube, and I will leave a link in the description to where you can listen to them, as well as being available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. So it should be available on whatever podcast platform you choose to use. I am currently in the process of coming up with a list of future guests that I would love to sit down and talk to. Please leave me a comment below and let me know who you think I should ask to speak to, who you'd like to hear more from, because again, I just really want to create the content that you would value hearing, and there might be people that I'm not aware of that it would be fab to sit down and talk to and hear their story. So I'd really appreciate that. Now, I appreciate I've given you a lot of homework and asked you to comment lots of different things. So thank you very much if you have listened to this whole vlog. I really appreciate you for supporting my content and supporting my small business. It means the world. And yeah, don't forget to like, leave the comment, subscribe, all the things. And I will see you in a new video very soon. Bye all.